I bought a battered paperback at a used bookstore in Portland last June. 1962 edition of a mid-century detective novel. $2. The clerk did not bag it. I read the first chapter on the train home. The margins were dense with notes. The handwriting was small, cramped, and slightly slanted to the right. The letters were drawn in a specific way. The lowercase g had a tail that looped twice. The number 7 had a crossbar. The capital R was joined to the next letter without lifting the pen. The handwriting was mine. The previous owner had been dead since 1967. The bookstore was called Burnside Used Books. It sat in a basement off Hawthorne Boulevard. Concrete steps led down to a single glass door. The owner was a man named Ed Markey who had run the shop since 1978. He kept his stock organized by decade. The detective novel was in a wooden crate labeled 1960s paperbacks, $1. Ed charged me $2 because he said the cover was in better shape than most. He did not write a receipt. He told me the book had come in 2 weeks earlier from a private estate sale. He did not remember which one. I have been buying used paperbacks for 15 years. About 600 books on the shelves in my apartment. I look for handwritten marginalia first. Notes in the margins tell you who read the book before you. A previous owner's reactions, underlines, doodles. I have a folder of photographs of every interesting marginalia I have found. Most are short. A name. A date. A grocery list copied onto the inside cover. The detective novel was different. Every page had notes. The handwriting was consistent across 240 pages. The previous owner had read the book carefully and written down their thoughts in a tight cursive that I recognized as my own. I noticed the underlines first. The previous reader had underlined a sentence on page 31 about a detective who only worked at night because the daylight made him nauseous. I have a habit of underlining sentences about characters who are uncomfortable in daylight. I have done it since college. 3 of the underlines on the first 50 pages matched sentences I had underlined in other books on my shelf. I checked. Same pen pressure. Same single firm line from left to right with a small upward flick at the end. I told myself it was a coincidence. 2 people can have a similar underlining style. I kept reading. By chapter 4 I had stopped pretending. The margin note on page 78 read: "This character is lying about the train." I have written that exact phrase in another book 5 years ago. The note on page 112 read: "The wife is the one who is afraid, not the husband." That is the kind of observation I make. The doodle in the back cover was a small fish drawn in the corner with 3 dots under it. I have drawn that exact fish on every notebook I have owned since I was 19. The misspelling in the margin note on page 193 was a word I misspell. The same way. Every time. Inside the front cover was a small purple ink stamp. The stamp read: "From the library of Clarence T Hollister, Medford, Oregon." A date had been written under the stamp in fountain pen. April 1965. I drove to Eugene the following Saturday and showed the book to a handwriting analyst named Janet Pell. She compared the margin notes to a letter I had written to my insurance company 2 months earlier. She studied them for an hour. She told me the writer of the margin notes and the writer of the letter were the same person. She told me there was no chance she was wrong. I drove to Medford the following weekend. Clarence T Hollister had lived in a small 2-bedroom bungalow on Maple Avenue from 1941 until his death. He had no children. He had never married. He had no living relatives at the time of his death. His estate had been donated to a local church. The church had sold his belongings at a yard sale in 2018. The detective novel had passed through 3 estate buyers before arriving at Burnside Used Books last May. I obtained a copy of his obituary from the public library in Medford. He died of a heart attack in November 1967. He was 58 years old. Back at home I catalogued the Marginalia in a spreadsheet. 240 pages. 397 separate notes. By the time I reached chapter 16 I noticed something. 4 pages of the book were missing. Pages 201 through 204. The pages had been carefully removed at the spine. The cut was clean and old. The previous reader had written a single line in the bottom margin of page 200. The note read, "I have folded the important pages into the back." I had not opened the back of the book since I bought it. I lifted the rear cover. Folded into the cardboard of the rear cover were 4 small pages of yellow stationery. The letter was addressed to my mother by her maiden name. The date written at the top was the 11th of November 1965. My mother was 9 years old in 1965. The letter was written in the same handwriting as the margin notes. The letter described a child who had not yet been born. It used my full name including the middle name I spell in an unusual way. It mentioned a small crescent-shaped scar on my left elbow. I got that scar at age 8 in 1991 when I fell off my bicycle. The letter is currently in a fireproof safe in my bedroom closet. The book is on a shelf above the safe. I have not opened either since November. Burnside Used Books closed in December. Ed Markey retired and the building was demolished in February to make room for a parking lot. I drove past the lot last month. It is empty asphalt now. I called my mother on her birthday and asked if she remembered receiving any letters from a man named Clarence Hollister when she was a child. She said she did not know that name. She also said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. She told me he had been her piano teacher.